I'm Hawes, and I chose painting for my project, and I'd love to tell you why in just a minute. This is the agenda for my presentation. What I'll be talking about is why I chose painting for my project, my mentor, Joseph Sanchez, what I learned during my project, and conclusion, what I got out of this experience and how it changed my life. I chose painting for my project because I've been around art all my life, and I always loved to draw and sketch and color things in, and I always felt like the one thing I never got good at is painting. And so I saw a great opportunity in this project to sharpen my skills as an artist to help me get through the future and high school. My mentor, Joseph Sanchez, has been a friend of my family for a while. So when I started the mentorship, I was more comfortable than I would be with someone I don't know, which gave me more confidence and made it easier to work at my fullest. We started off using charcoal, and then we used watercolor for the remainder of our time. I learned new techniques of painting every time I had a lesson with Joseph, such as using more or less water, how to use wide and thin paintbrushes, and the best type of brush strokes to use for different types of landscapes. I met with Joseph 1 to 2 times a week at his art studio for 2 to 3 hours a session. Joseph is associated with the White Mountain Apache Reservation and is a leader in indigenous and Chicano arts since the 1970s. Joseph is a respected working artist in the U.S. and Canada. I will now be talking about what I learned, and specifically the techniques. First, we started off with charcoal because it's a little similar in the way that if you mess up, you can't just erase and fix it. After we got used to charcoal a little, we moved on to painting. We tested around a little, and then we finally chose we would do watercolor. These were the first charcoal drawings we did. The first one I did a yucca just to test out how it was. I didn't know much about charcoal because I never really experienced too much with it. So it was fun to just test around, and so then for my second drawing I drew a random guy. Just getting used to it, I thought that it was a little weird at first, but then I realized that it's not as hard as I made it seem. After we were done messing around with charcoal a little, we decided to go into painting. I wanted to do a landscape, but I wanted to make the tree a little abstract. And in that way, I just kind of made the leaves a little more blocky instead of more round. I just wanted to test out how the different brush strokes would be, and I thought that it turned out pretty good. This was our first painting, and we tried painting clouds, sky, a deserty landscape with one tree. This next painting, we decided to test around with abstract art. We just wanted to, once again, get used to the different types of paints. And this one was watercolor. We decided to just mess around with abstract and see how it felt. I really liked it, and I thought that watercolor was challenging, but I thought that would be the best thing to work on for this project. After we figured out what paint we were going to use, we decided that it was time to plan out what we wanted to do. I decided that I wanted to do a Japanese landscape with 2 houses, some cherry blossom trees, and with some mountains in the background. I also wanted to challenge myself, so I drew a lake and tried to make it look like everything was reflecting off of it. I didn't have a whole bunch of room at the bottom of the page to do that, so I just did the houses, the trees, and the bench. I didn't have enough room to do the mountains, the clouds, or the moon. After I did this test drawing, I thought about what I wanted to change, and I thought that I could make the trees and the clouds more realistic. So then I decided to practice drawing my clouds and trees, but mostly clouds, just to kind of get that sky look. I spent the majority of my time on this drawing, mostly just getting shading, and just figuring out what the best kind of clouds were. You can see that I did two very fluffy, I guess you could say, clouds, and one is going half off the paper and one is mostly on the paper. I just wanted to get a feel of not putting them centered on paper and making it look at least a little more realistic. And if you look under that, you can see that I kind of did the same clouds as I did in the Japanese picture, where it's a little more misty and spread out. And so I just kind of tested around and tried to see what I could do. And after testing, I really liked what I created. After I tested out with the clouds, we decided that it would be time to paint with some watercolor. This is a painting of the sketch I did earlier with the charcoal, and I didn't really expect it to turn out this way, but I tried doing a lot of different things, such as making the trees different colors. As you can see, there's some parts that are shaded and then the other parts aren't. And then with the sky, I made it a whole bunch of different colors to see what would look the best for that. And I asked Joseph what color I should do for the mountains, and we eventually agreed on purple. I really like how this turned out, but I then realized that I thought I could do a little better. After seeing the last painting I did, after looking over it for a little while, I decided I wanted to try something a little different. My mentor and I talked a little, and Joseph told me to just work on my mountains. He said that he liked them, and so I worked on my mountains, and so I kind of just did a little outline of the mountains, and as you can see, it's not perfect or anything, but so for this I decided to do mountains, a sky, and a moon. The moon is not very circular, but this was just supposed to be for testing. So for the mountains, I did shading all over them, and so the brush strokes I use is just quick, fast, short ones, and just did that a little over and over for them. And this is when I started learning about layering. So I let it dry and I worked on the sky a little. And at first I was just trying to get a dark blue for the night, but then I realized that it would look a lot better, in my opinion, if I had multiple colors. So I did light blue, I did dark blue, I did purple, and I tried layering them and mixing them as best as I could. And I like it, but I realized that it's a little mellow for a sky. It's just a little boring, so I thought that I could do better. And with the mountains, after I let it dry, I did a couple more layering, and I thought, once again, this could be better. So after I realized my mistakes, I told Joseph what I did and what I thought I could do better. And so then I started moving on to canvas. For my final piece, I decided that I was just going to do mountains, sky, and a moon. And so this is the result of all of my work. I did all of my techniques that I knew and mixed them together. I did layering, shading, brush strokes, and I just really like how this one came out. For the mountains, you can see that I tried a lot harder to make the reflection of the light off the little edges and tops of them. I really like how it came out, and I feel like it gives it just that little bit more of realism, and I really appreciate that about this painting. I really like the shading I did with the mountains, but the real shading or layering, I should say, that I love the most is in the sky. I made it more of a circular shape away from the moon, and I feel like that turned out really nice, and all of the different colors I used were very, very appropriate for this sky, I think. I first started off with just a layer of light blue and kind of let that dry a little, and did a layer of purple on my mountains. After I was done putting a layer of purple on my mountains, I went back to the sky and went back with a darker blue. I mixed this around a little, and I made sure that it was more light around the mountains and that the darker parts were a little bit more above it, just to give it that glowing effect. And so after I did the blue, the dark blue, I let it dry a little, and then I moved on to the moon. I liked how this one turned out. It's pretty simple, but it's just nice that it has that nice glowing effect around it. And then after that, I moved on to the last layer of the sky. I did a darker purple and just mixed it in with the darker blue. I really enjoyed how this came out, and I'm very happy about it. For watching my presentation. I really enjoyed this project, and I really felt like I got a great bond with my mentor. I learned a lot about painting that I didn't know, and that made me happy, and all of the paintings and pictures I used in my portfolio to get into my dream school, NMSA. I was very happy that I got this opportunity, and I just want to say thank you.